I'm Paralympic champion Stephani Victor. I lost my legs when I was a pedestrian hit by a car, and I made a decision in ICU to document what was happening to me. On December 19th, 1995, I was going out to dinner with my ex-boyfriend when an out-of-control car came up into the driveway and crushed me into the back of his vehicle. And in order for the doctor to save my life, he had to amputate both of my legs.
Hi, I'm Chris Wadell. Welcome to Living It, the podcast where we join experts in the experience of being human. Be bold. Say yes to adventure. Say yes to living it. Welcome to Chris Wadell Living It, where we talk with experts in the experience of being human, those who have taken the risk to realize their dreams and live fully. Today, we have Stephani Victor, who is a two-time gold medalist in the Paralympics, a two-time silver medalist, a one-time bronze medalist, four-time world champion, won one overall World Cup, 4 discipline titles. But what I think is most interesting is that after she had an accident in which a car careening out of control ran into her and ending up in amputating her legs, she started filming her story 2 weeks after the accident. Stephani, welcome, and let's get into your story.
I was like, was it 2 weeks? I think it was even less than 2 weeks. I had a dream in ICU that I would make a film about my recovery. I'd had this, extraordinary life-changing accident, and having lost both my legs, what did I envision? Making a film about it. And that's what I started to do.
How did that come about? Because you were an actress, you were a filmmaker, USC Film School, right?
Yes.
And so that's the medium in which you played already. But
Right.
why decide to make a film, and especially whether it's 2 weeks or whether it was right away? I'd always heard that it was right away, that
It was right away.
but it really was. I mean, conscious thought, like 2 weeks is within that realm of like sort of dream-like morphine state after being in the hospital of like you're actually coming to conscious thought. Why decide to tell this story?
Well, I was in the hospital
Mm-hmm.
when I started filming.
Yeah.
It was an evolution. Okay, so you sort of have to back up to my childhood. From my earliest memories, I wanted to be an actress. I pursued every angle of acting, performing, dance, musical theater, singing. I'm still not a great singer, but I love singing. And acting led me to Southern California and to the drama program at USC. And after my first few auditions in the real world of Hollywood, it didn't resonate with me.
The real world of Hollywood. Are you allowed to say that?
Okay. Did I say it? I don't know, Chris. Like, what did I have for breakfast? I can't even tell you. On a cellular level, it did not resonate with me, this world of acting and auditioning, and it wasn't what I imagined it would be. What interested me was storytelling. And so here across campus at USC was the very prestigious School of Cinema Television. And I started applying right away to the program, and I applied to everything. I applied to screenwriting, production, critical studies, and I just wanted to get in. All aspects of filmmaking I wanted to learn, because I felt I was drawn to it. I mean, all I can tell you is that I'm an intuitive person, and I have followed my intuition, and making films seemed like a far more expansive opportunity in storytelling than just being an actor. And I wasn't even sure I would ever make it as an actor. But I didn't want to be just, reduced to whatever role I was hired for, because I felt like it was so much more expansive than that. And USC was just this it was so different than the small town humble beginnings where I grew up in Pennsylvania. And so whatever camera I could acquire, and I learned so much at USC because it's a very hands-on program. And I got into both critical studies and production. I was the first woman ever accepted into both programs. And Dean Daly said, you should graduate in both, which only added another year to my curriculum. But it was very beneficial to me because I learned so much through the theory and history of filmmaking in the critical studies aspect. And then the hands-on was production. So what I remember most about film school was Nina Menkes was one of our directing teachers. And she stood up in front of the room and she told us, she really put us in our place, because she's like, you guys think you're directors. You're not directors. You're not anything. Like, you need life experience. And that really resonated with me. Like, I didn't feel insulted by it. Some people, already had a beret and a clapboard, and they were certainly parading themselves around campus as directors. And I didn't know what I was yet. I just knew that I wanted to be in this creative expression of storytelling. And so laying there in the hospital after losing my legs, I'm interacting and with the most interesting and colorful people in the hospital, and the range of emotions that were coming out of me and my family and my friends and the people closest to me. Like, that was the compelling life experience that I felt Nina Menkes was telling us. You don't have a clue what this is. And I'm like, oh, I'm right in it. I got to get a camera. I got to film this. And then this vision of this film was what gave me the belief in myself to do it. Because I don't even, there wasn't specific, it wasn't like a complete foreshadowing, where I was looking into the future. It was a feeling tone that I had as a person sitting in the audience, watching these images on the film. That was my dream. And I just thought, if that is my life, and I'm going to capture this, and it's going to move people, and it's going to bring up empathy and gratitude and connection, then I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
The life experience is really interesting because you have two very separate kind of life experiences, right? Because you have the experience of you as the patient,
right,
going through all of these experiences. And obviously this is a profound life experience. It's just one of those things that sounds almost impossible to happen in some ways. Like, you were packing your car and some guy ran into you in your driveway. Is that right?
Yeah, it was actually my ex-boyfriend's house. We were standing in his driveway, and back then the CD player was in the trunk of the vehicle. So he had, invited me to come around to the back of the car, and we were looking at this song on this CD that he wanted to play for me. I'm Sorry to a Friend, Edwin McCain. And the road was actually supposed to be closed. So it was under a considerable amount of construction. And a young driver who had only had his driver's license for 10 days was impaired. He was driving under the influence and lost control of the car in the construction zone and came up into the driveway and crushed me into the back of the vehicle where we were standing. So I was hit. So we were pinned and dragged between the two. I was pinned and dragged between the two cars down the sidewalk. And when the cars came to a stop, I fell to the ground. I was not unconscious. It's hard to make me go unconscious, as we'll talk about in my ski racing career. but I saw the orientation of my legs, and it looked like I had stepped on a landmine. In fact, that's how the paramedics described it. You know, from their observation, it was pretty vital. And you know, my right leg was up by my ear, and my left leg was twisted around and blown open. And so, you know, I was conscious during all of this. I was conscious as the paramedics were getting an IV started and getting me in what's called a mask suit, a pair of compression pants to stop the bleeding and to sort of, you know, my legs were so, I had compound fractures above and below the knee. So it was really, you know, quite a brutal scene. And they got me to the hospital and into the operating room, actually. So
Yeah, exactly. They have to get you in.
angels.
Exactly. And so the thing is, one, in telling this story, one, you're the patient and you're going through, you're as raw as you're going to be, because you don't even begin to understand. I mean, it's hard to comprehend the situation that you're in. But then
Right.
the flip side of it is that you then are the director. And so it's kind of an interesting thing to see how you interpret yourself on screen, right? That this is the,
Oh,
you're looking for the most honest, raw moments. And you as the director going, yes, that's exactly what I mean. But as human beings, we're often thinking, oh, don't show that, because that reveals something that might not look exactly the way that I want to look. How did
see, you're talking in the current state of affairs with on the planet. I think the present count is we have 4.6 billion cameras on the planet. Okay. And so we're in a unique, very different moment in time where everybody's carrying a camera and everybody's filming themselves and everybody is editing themselves. I was filming that is what is unique about the footage that I caught and has taken me, you know, 27 years to digest. I didn't look at any of the footage until it thoroughly looking at it. You know, there were little bits and pieces that I would grab for television programs and different things that I had appeared on, but actually sitting down and spending hour after hour until 500 hours had passed and really looking at it and digesting that did not happen until after my crash in Sochi. So that, you know, that's when I really,
and that's 2014. So this is
I was in
1995.
2014. So when I was filming, you have to understand, I was 26 years old, and people thought it was kind of cute, like, she wants to, what's happening to her? Like, nobody had ever done that. Nobody, and there was no resistance to being filmed in the hospital. Today, you know, everybody had, well, there's HIPAA, so you're not going to film in a hospital, but there's HR departments that, you know, strictly regulate, and people are so self-conscious. Oh, I can't hold a glass of wine at the party because someone might get a photo of it and then it's on Facebook and then my HR department is going to call me. Like, this is how we operate. That wasn't like that back in 1995. Back in 1995, I was a young, creative, like, as if I had a violin. My instrument was a camera, and I was like, wow, you know, look what happened. Look, what do you think? I wanted to film to remember, to digest, to help process. And I would like to take credit for directing. Not directing, it was just, I was the one saying, yeah, let's do this. So I guess on one side you could say it's directing, but it wasn't directing in that I had a guy with a boom and we're going into the operating room. It was me, like, holding the camera saying to my surgeon, is it okay if I film this? And he's like, if you want to, okay. And like what you and I are doing right now, he and I were having a dialogue on video in the operating room because he was just doing, you know, some local so I have stuff like that in the film, but I really want to clarify that who we've evolved to as people, as a planet, and there was a great film at Sundance this year. I'm going to make a shameless plug for it. It was called The Fantastic Machine, and it won the world, one of the world documentary prizes. I wish people could see it here in the US, because it really started with the history of film and then all through where we are today. And without giving too much away, there was this one shot in the film where these two guys are on, the tallest building ever in Australia. No safety, no nothing. He's got a cell phone, and they're dangling a beautiful woman off the building to film it for their social media. This is shock value. I wasn't filming for that purpose. I was filming because I didn't know the power of the camera. That's what this movie is about. Like, do we understand the power of the camera, the power of the internet, the power of recording stuff and presenting ourselves? Because it's not raw. What I filmed was raw. There was not lighting, there was not sound, there was not manipulation. It may be the last remaining effort at documentary. And I studied Michael Apted at USC. He had a brilliant documentary series called 7 Up, and he filmed every 7 years. And there were all these, very scholastic discussions about, well, when you turn the camera on, you're editing, you're affecting the documentary. When you edit, you're making a choice. And all of this is true, right? So that's why it's been really hard for me to look at myself and know that I lived through this and go, what can I do with this information? What am I thinking? Like, I definitely don't look put together. I'm not going to win 50 most beautiful people like you did. I am going to look like a very raw, exposed human being who made every effort to stay positive, grateful, move forward, and connect with, because I'll tell you what, especially in the beginning, what was so moving to me, it happened with many nurses. So to all my nurses, all my doctors, all my medical team, the first nurse, I had been in ICU for 10 days and they didn't wash my hair. Okay, we had other things to deal with. I had more amputations, and I remember her stroking my hair, and I could feel there was resistance there. I didn't know what it was. My mother came to tell me later. I still had blood in my hair, and she washed it out. Okay, so I don't have that on film, but that is a moment that of millions of moments that I carry in my heart of like, oh, we don't need reasons like to be kind to one another. It is inherent in our being if we just get out of the way. If we just get out of the way and stop focusing on how we look in social media and comparing ourselves to blah, 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 like, forget all that. Like, what are you made of on the inside? And some of the things that I filmed is so humbling. My prosthetist, Wendy Brewer, she married Matthew Brewer, who was one of our athletes at the National Ability Center and on the US team. Marcel and I taught him how to ski in a hydra. I digress, but Wendy told me the other night that she had a patient, a bilateral amputee patient, come into Hanger Clinic, where she is a magnificent prosthetist. And that patient was taken into the room where I have given Wendy one of my gold medal Paralympic posters, and I autographed it to Wendy. And Wendy came in and saw this woman looking at the poster, and she was in tears. And she turned to Wendy and she said, this woman saved my life 27 years ago, because I lost my legs around the same time that she did. And when I saw her on 2020, ABC's 2020, yes, Barbara Walters did a little story on me after my accident. She said, I was in a very dark place. I was close to taking my own life. And when I saw her, meaning me, she is married, has kids, has grandkids. She's walking and she's, lived this amazing life. And she turned to Wendy and she said, if you still talk to her, will you please tell her thank you? And I said, well, if I ever needed to get out of my own way.
And what did you do? Hold on. What did you do that affected this woman? So
I have no idea because I
on
didn't meet her. I didn't talk to her. But I know in that interview with 2020, I talked about how grateful I was to be alive, how empowering it is to forgive, and that I just automatically in the hospital forgave this young driver who hit me because I imagined that it wasn't his intention to do this. And even though he made some bad choices of drinking and driving or smoking a little marijuana or whatever, like if we could just know the future, and we don't, like life happens. And I set myself free through forgiveness and a prayer, an ongoing prayer that he would have a full and meaningful life and know that I wasn't carrying any negativity against him, that we were both free.
It's what you needed. And this is something that is really strange because I actually saw a very similar thing to what happened to you. I pulled into a gas station. This is amazing. I pulled into a gas station in San Diego and a guy was there in like a white Suburban or something and was changing his oil, and some guy behind him, and I didn't see how it all happened, ended up like pulling like bumper to bumper, like ran right through this guy bumper to bumper. And it's like I pulled in as this guy was crumpling to the ground, and he's saying to the other guy, like, why didn't you back up? Like, you hit me, why didn't you? And this is all in a parking lot. So it's kind of like I've heard your story, but then I saw it happen. I have no idea what happened to this guy later on, but just looking at that guy lying on the ground, looking up at the other guy, the idea of forgiveness was not necessarily, I don't think, was the first thing on his mind, but forgiveness is part of the self-preservation, isn't it? Of how you are going to recover. Is that the story that you thought you were telling when you started filming? Did you have an idea of what the story was?
I wish I was that clever in my imagination. I didn't know where this journey was going to take me. I still don't. Life still keeps showing up with some pretty fantastic surprises. What I have always had, Chris, is a base in spiritual practice. That was taught to me at
before the accident as well.
Yes, before the accident. I had a near-death experience when I was a child, when I was 9 years old. And this profoundly shaped my pursuit of answers to the existential question. Why am I here? Why are we alive? What is our purpose? What is the meaning in this? How do we make meaning? How do I live my values and defining those values?
And the thirst for knowledge as well, right?
Absolutely. So that was very much in me as a child, and it shaped what I pursued, in that time between when I was 9 years old and 26. So when my second near-death experience happened, I was really like, oh yeah, this is it. You know, Eckhart Tolle talks about it a lot, and I know you're a fan of Master Eckhart, that there's different levels of waking up. And when we have a near-death experience, you know, that is a profound waking up, right? And people who have that experience often will continue to seek that, right? The waking up to more of who we are and why we're here. And forgiveness, you know, was something that I learned very early on. So it was only about applying it in this situation. And it wasn't anything meditated. That's not how spirit works. Spirit comes from your heart. I have a devoted practice of daily Kundalini yoga and meditation, which, as people who know Kundalini yoga as a practice, largely about heart opening. Now, I had no idea when I started Kundalini that by daily opening my heart, that I was my little healing what had happened to me. I can look back on it now with some experience that we've been talking about and go, oh, wow, that was it. The cumulative, collective experiences of heart opening and getting beaten down. Like it's not that it just happened to me once. I mean, we all know as human beings that the entire human experience is about loss. And it's how we come back from that each time. There's a collective toll that happens, I think, which is what's interesting about being in this stage of life, retirement from ski racing and so on and so forth. But
that near-death experience, though, opened up your life, right? Opened up your eyes. You were truly more alive as a result of this near-death experience. But
yes.
Then is there a responsibility to share that near-death experience, to share the evolution, to share the eye-opening with other people who might not have been through that? Is that part of what you're doing? Is it conscious? Is it subconscious? How does that work?
Well, that's a great question. I don't think it's conscious. I think it's subconscious. And for me, people manifest service in all kinds of ways. I learned about being of service very young. And when I was 18, I did the LifeSpring courses. Again, my mother introduced me to that. My mother also introduced me to Agape International Spiritual Center in Los Angeles. Reverend Michael Beckwith has been my master meditation teacher for over 30 years. And this started before my accident, right? So it was a pursuit of, you know, these awakenings and being of service, right? Because there's something happens when we stop having the focus on ourselves and the focus is outside of ourselves. And for me, what, you know, people manifest service in big ways. They may have a nonprofit. You have One Revolution. And these are wonderful, structured, measurable ways of being of service. I have always felt that being of service can be as impactful but simple as, how do you show up? How do you come in the door? What's your energy when you come in the door? Are you bringing energy? Are you taking energy? And I always wanted to be, because I've always had a lot of energy, I wanted to bring energy towards something good, whatever that is. And that's a large way that I am of service. And so the film, like I said, there's still ego involved, okay? And my ego has always been extremely self-critical, extremely judgmental. Even through, and I don't know, their studies are coming out now that this is inherited through our DNA, and maybe I got some of that from my mother's side of the family, and very humble generations on that side. But I wasn't coming from this place of I'm the greatest, I wasn't a Muhammad Ali, like I'm the greatest, I'll show you. It was like, oh, I really doubt, I really question. And the feeling of humility of laying on the ground for my second near-death experience and my legs crushed and not knowing if I would live or die. And the prayer was, I want to live. When I woke up in ICU and I saw my mother's eyes, the person who I've shared so much of this spiritual journey with, and the humility of, oh, that prayer was answered. I'm alive. What am I going to do with this? Think I'm any good enough, but I'm going to show up with energy and an intention to do good and be good and see what happens.
And is that ultimately the definition of being alive? That's showing up? Because part of it for you, the impediment sounds like the ego saying, I'm not good enough. And that can be all the reason in the world to stop. But if you're alive,
that's why it's taken 20 years.
Well, that's if you're alive, then being alive is not stopping, right? I mean, being dead is effectively stopping. So being alive is not stopping. And is that definition, and is that impetus to go forward with an open heart, which opens yourself up to failure, to heartbreak, to all of these other things that we want to avoid, but yet you've kind of seen it because it is, I mean, it has to be the Phoenix, right? It has to be this, like, if it is this near death, this death experience, you have to rise from this death experience. Is that a lot of what has pushed you? And in pushing you, like, there's a lot of time when you're in the hospital. You had
I was in and out for 3 years.
3 years,
Right
tons of surgeries. You're lying there, and as you said, this is pre-iPhone, this is pre-streaming. So you have a television in the hospital room, but
I never turned it on.
But there's not really much of anything. So in your thoughts as you're lying there, did you envision, okay, this is well, really for you, this is your third chance, right? So you had the near-death experience when you were 9, then another near-death experience. Did you envision where this might go, how it might manifest it, how you might look at yourself differently than you had before, the things that might have stopped you?
I had part of my meditation practice, and I think this is true for most people. It's an intention, it's a focus to stay in the present, right? Not going back, not going forward. If I had, and I have done more looking back, obviously, because I have video and photographs and things to reference in looking back. And what did the Buddha say? All pain exists in the past and in the future, and in the present is where real happiness resides. And so that's what a meditator seeks, right? Like really being present. And a near-death experience, nothing will put you in the present moment like that kind of urgency of life or death. Nothing puts you in the present moment quite like pushing out of the start gate for a ski race, right? We don't know what's going to happen. We just throw ourselves past that wand and go like our life depends on it. At least that's how I ski raced. And that's how I have lived all of my life, right? If I knew where it was going, I definitely would have done things different. I'm not going to get into that because that's a little personal, but each one of us has. Now I think about it, right? Because now I'm 53, and I go, well, something I never asked myself was like, well, where am I going to be in 5 years, or where am I going to be in 20 years? When you hit that top of the bell curve, 50, you go, oh, ooh. And then you start thinking about these things. And that's where the practice of staying present is so valuable for recognizing, I don't know, maybe I don't want to know what's ahead, but what is right here, right now, that is precious, and that's to be enjoyed and to be fulfilled by. I'm far away from perfect at doing that. Oh my gosh, work in progress. The film, the lady, the whole 9 yards. But the awareness around, catching myself. Okay, that's it. Next moment, catching myself. Okay, getting caught in the sea of commotion and ideas and judgment and comparison and self-criticism, and just stopping that and going,
well, on your website, you asked the question of effectively what would things have looked like if Anne Frank had a video camera instead of a diary. Right. And it's interesting because it's, for her, it sounded like she was looking for that true friend, right? So Anne Frank was looking for, and in saying a true friend, looking for a vehicle through which she could be truly honest.
Right.
And that's the representation of the true friend. This sounds like a lot of what you're talking about in terms of being in the moment. Right. The moment is the honesty, right? It's unprocessed honesty. It just is what it is. And if you're fully there, then it really is everything that it can be. Right. And searching for those moments in telling the story, does that push you for some of those moments? Because as you said, skiing is something that pushes you into the present, but you had no design whatsoever on being a skier. You didn't look at that and say, this is a vehicle for me to become more of who I think I want to be or who I should be. Right. How did that work?
That's where the love story unfolds. My film is a love story. It's not a hospital story or a skiing accomplishment story or any. My story, when that film comes out, did you see Fire of Love? I loved this movie this year. It's a love story. And there were a lot of movies at Sundance this year that were based on love stories. And what I have found, since I have been gifted another day with, he's over here on the couch, he just smiled. You'd think he'd be bored of listening to me by now. Gabrielle Reese said, when she was talking about Laird, do you ever feel like you again? I say that to Marcel after 24 years of being together. I say, you again? And he's like, I love you. And I found the two greatest loves of my life in the same day when I took my first lesson in a monoski with Marcel Puonen at the National Ability Center, a really handsome Swiss guy with white Alpina sunglasses and a mustache, very Euro. And I was like, oh, Marcel, you must be from France. Oh, I speak French. And he said, no, you asked for a good ski coach. The best come from Switzerland. I am Swiss. So I was educated right off the bat with him. But I fell in love with skiing, and more importantly, I fell in love with him because he is so passionate. And certainly at then, that was really refreshing. I had just spent 3 years in and out of the hospital having 15 reconstructive surgeries on my legs. And here was this guy, with his white leather ruche gloves. I told him they look like Mickey Mouse gloves. There's no such thing as disabled skiing. I teach skiing. Whether you're blind or backwards on one leg or mono, it doesn't matter. The ski doesn't know. You have to make it turn. You have to make it go fast. You have to put it on edge. You have to stop it. I will teach you skiing. And on the chairlift, off we were. And I was like, who is this guy? So awesome. Everybody for the last 3 years has been telling me, you're handicapped, you're crippled, you're an amputee. And I'm like, that's not who I am. What happened to me is not who I am.
Right.
Okay. Who I am, Marcel saw. He saw potential. Nobody else did. You remember our head coach, sorry, I won't say his name, but he was like, she's a double amputee. She'll never make it in the Paralympics. The factor system isn't for you, and da 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 da. And I was like, I don't care. What was that, Dumb and Dumber? He's like, 1 in a million? I've got a chance. You know, that was me, like total Dumb and Dumber. Let slalom downhill. I don't know the difference. Just throw me, push me through that gate, and let's go. And I wasn't in the hospital. I was on snow, I was on a mountain, I was with this incredibly passionate human being who, like washing the blood out of my hair, didn't do things for me because he thought I couldn't do it, or I was less than or disabled. He did and does things for me because he compliments me. He makes my life richer, easier, better.
For him as well.
No, maybe maybe if you ask him, he'll say, oh, she's a tough one. But I know he genuinely loves me, and every meal that he cooks and every ski that he waxed and the house that he built. I mean, he built a house for us based on our travels around the world and ski racing and all the things we loved, you know, what we loved in Japan, what we loved in Switzerland, what we loved in New Zealand, like implementing all these things. And he's a highly skilled, you know, Swiss woodworker. So he made this house perfectly accessible, and accessible in a way that's not, you know, a big blue sign and grab bars on the wall like, this is accessible, I hit you over the head with that. It's like it just flows. And it's such a representation to me of like how inclusive the world can be without like patting yourself on the back for accessibility or inclusion. You know, it's a flow, and like everyone is welcome and every movement is possible. And he did that for me, for us. It's not finished yet, and neither is my film, but we're working on it.
Working on it, a work in progress. Well, you hope that it all is a work in progress, right? If there's a definite finish, then sometimes there has to be something next, really.
Oh,
but
yeah.
This is an ongoing process. What did skiing represent for you? I mean, you'd come out of the hospital. You know, this is sort of, as you said, this isn't being in the hospital. This isn't doctors. This is suddenly being on a mountain. What did that represent for you physically, mentally, emotionally? Because it sounds like it's always that journey for you.
Well, Marcel was coming from a ski racing background. He had raced with some of the best ski racers at the time in Switzerland. And you just have to watch him ski. Okay. When you watch him ski, it's like Mikhail Baryshnikov when he would dance. You know, it was so much strength and power and energy, but flow and grace and precision. And I would just see him ski, and his faculty, his adaptability on skis, what he could do, and that he was so committed to figuring out how to teach me on one ski to do that. And it was just pure joy, just pure bliss, and incredibly hard work, which I love. You know, that's where my self-critic is satisfied, right? Well, just keep working harder, you know, you'll be worth it if you just keep working harder, learn more. And there was so much to learn. This was a whole world. I didn't know anything about the ski racing world. And then you go to Switzerland and you see that it's a vibe, it's a vibration, and that people live for it and they're born into it and they raise up in it. And he's part of that tradition and that history. And I was like, wow, if like Jesus, you know, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, his racing suit. And, you know, I would have access into this magical world that was such a massive departure from the smell of rubbing alcohol and bleached blankets and the sensation of another IV going in and the breathing that it takes to get through the pain, like all that. You just got to go fast and be precise and get that ski on edge. And the conditions always changing, and the snow condition, and he is like no excuse. That's the deal with Marcel. No excuse. You can't blame the equipment. You can't blame the terrain. You can't blame the race course set. You can't blame your the snow. You have what you have to work with today in this moment, and you get out there and you give it your best. And for me, I didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it, I could see, oh, that's what living with a disability is, right? I can't change the condition. I can't waste energy, you know, feeling sad about what I don't have, what I wish. It's like, this is it. This is what I have to work with. This is today. I got to go out and live it.
Living it, exactly.
Maybe that's why you finally asked me to be on your show.
That could be it. Exactly. The pursuit, I mean, with Marcel, with ski racing, with skiing, what about with storytelling? I mean, storytelling was your ultimate pursuit. How does storytelling fit within this now new pursuit and another eye-opening experience?
Yeah, it's pure magic, right? Okay, so Marcel's mother language is Swiss German, which is a spoken language. It's based on High German or proper German, and Italian and French and a little Romansh, but it's a spoken language. And he is so attuned to what he hears. You know, he has this incredible sensitivity. So how he listens and interprets language, and he taught himself English, which I find remarkable, that you could just pick up and go to another country without speaking the language and start over. And that's what he did here in the US. Like, he took me into his world, and that just you know, opened up the library of endless books of stories from, you know, this teeny tiny little country that's a fifth of the size of Utah, Switzerland, and 8 million people. Is that right? 8 million. And so rich with a pride in how they do things. They make watches and cheese and chocolate, and you know, it's like whatever they make, it's quality, because that's what they value. It's part of the culture. And so for me, the stories in Switzerland, this whole new world that I got to, you know, enter into through him, was just fascinating, brilliant. I still love it. I would go, I told him right now, I was like, should we go back? Should we go back to Cortina? The Olympics are coming to Cortina. It would be the 20-year anniversary since I won the gold medal in Torino, and there's nothing like winning an Olympic gold medal in Italy, people. So if you want to wax your skis, this is how I talk to the athletes. Ask Matthew. Matthew's like, I think you want to go more than I do, Steph. You're retired. Let's not forget that. But there is nothing like winning in Italy. You know, I won one of those globes in Italy too, and we went down to the restaurant for dinner in the hotel, and the waiter comes over. I mean, just the whole posture. You know, waiting is a profession. You know, they have so much pride, right? He comes over and with his little scraper scripts that comes up, and he said, "You were the one who won. Would you bring down your globe?" Marcel went up to the whole restaurant. They passed out champagne for everyone in the restaurant, and they all did a toast and held up my globe. I don't know if it could happen in the US. It didn't happen to me in the US. It happened to me in Italy. And so you have these magical experiences and accumulate these stories through your experience that it would be sad not to share it. So thank you for having me on your show and getting to share a little bit of it, because I love it, and I really appreciate all that I was exposed to in all these different countries and cultures around the world. And the language to me is so captivating.
And you speak Swiss German now, right?
Well, I certainly gave it my best effort to get my Swiss passport. That was part of the interview process at the Swiss consulate in San Francisco. And, I studied for months. And for me, because I'm a visual person, different, Marcel's, I think, both visual and kinesthetic and auditory, but I am definitely a visual person. So I put together a storybook of all of our experiences in Switzerland. And when I spoke at the European Cup finals, and Michael Knaus had asked me if I would be the speaker on behalf of the athletes. And this was in Davos, Switzerland. And I knew it was going to be on TV, and that was so cool for his family. And no one would see it in the US. But I went out there and gave this speech. And I came backstage, and there was a gentleman standing there, very nice, nicely dressed, very, very Swiss. And he said to me, "You did a lovely job." And I said, "Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for that." And then he went out and spoke after me, and he happened to be the president of Switzerland. I recognize him, but he invited us to the Bundeshaus, which is, their Senate. And we went and did that. So I had all kinds of pictures in my picture book. And when I went in there, I answered the questions, for to become Swiss. I was going to say a bilateral. I am a bilateral amputee, but I'm also a dual citizen, both in the US and in Switzerland. And so is Marcel.
And did you do that in English, or did you do it in Swiss German?
I answered most of the questions in Swiss German. And when you're under pressure, like the second language that you learn, which for me was French, that would kick in. So I would throw some French words in there, and she to me like, "Okay, make a choice. We can talk in French," because she certainly spoke German and French and Italian and everything. She was very kind to me, and we finished up in English, but they really loved my picture book that told the story of my cultural ties and connection to Switzerland, because that's what's very important. If you're not living in the country and you become a citizen, you have to demonstrate your ties to Switzerland. And I think I did that very successfully. And then I went and raced for Switzerland as a thank you to my coach. So that was that sealed the deal.
You've had a bunch of false starts as far as your ending to the film, right? Because Salt Lake, in some ways, in 2002, making your first Paralympic Games, winning a bronze medal, was going to be the ending. And then it kept continuing and continuing. Are you somebody who has an easier time with beginnings, being in the moment, than you do with endings? Is this part of the issue, or do you have an idea of where the ending might be, or is it so hard that if you end, then it's ended as opposed to continuing?
Exactly. I think you are a very keen observer, Chris, and you have a great way of articulating that. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but when I met Marcel, part of the thrill and excitement of skiing and the Paralympics, he said there's no greater honor to race for your country in your own country. You don't have a chance of making the Salt Lake team, but if you train with me, and that I did, and we won the bronze medal, and he was thrilled, like, "Yay, we did it." And I was like, no. I put a declaration out to the universe that I was going to win a gold. And the secret, of course, was that I married my coach and was able to achieve that in Torino. So that always felt like the gold medal ending, right? The walking off into the sunset. I really have no idea what the editing process is going at this stage, right? There's viewing footage, there's cutting scenes. We've assembled a long cut we're calling it the greatest hits of, things that happened, story points along the way. But a crafted editor, which I am not, is the next member of my team that I'm hoping to bring on board, and they will bring, as well as a producer and maybe even a co-director, I don't know, to really explore for the sake of storytelling. Like I had to really separate between the life of Stephanie Victor and a documentary film that's a love story, right? So, what is in 90 minutes the story that I want to tell? And that's not going to be everything. So there will be putting some endings on it. And I do like beginnings. So I have to embrace this, I think, in order for it to actually happen, as just like I did in ski racing, that I won giant slalom, no secret to anybody, my favorite discipline. Even though I won my most World Cups in slalom, I just was always second in giant slalom, except when I won in the World Championships and that globe that one year. But the thing that broke that silver streak of silver World Cup wins in giant slalom was when I was up in the start. All the ways I thought, how do I just go 2/10 faster? What I discovered was that I had to give myself permission to fail. I had to risk going out of the race, getting hurt, losing the globe, right? You can't not finish a race and still win the globe in most cases. And so I had to give myself permission to fail. And as I was, in the start house and thinking, okay, I'm going to give myself permission to fail. And I'm also going to give myself permission to ski the absolute best race that I ever have. And to believe in myself that right here in this moment, there is nothing more that I have to get. I have everything it takes in this moment to fail and deal with that, or win gloriously and receive that. Okay. And I think in order for my film to get made, I've got to give myself permission to fall badly. And that will be the opening of the space to let real creativity and real connection and authenticity to unfold. And that is my hope for the film, period. In the same way that I wanted to race for Switzerland to thank Marcel, I don't want this film to be about me. I want this film to be about what a great gift this life has given me to spend so many years in marriage and in skiing and in this life with someone like Marcel.
That sounds like that
All
sounds
right,
like
you're
you
hired,
are
Chris. You can direct it.
approaching the time. Well, it is, I mean, it is a challenge because one, you're talking about giving yourself permission in a ski race,
Right.
permission to fail. There will be another ski race, but this is
Not anymore.
not anymore, right? But at the moment, there at that time there would have been. But this is also this is your life, and your life in a far more profound way than you probably ever envisioned your life could be. And then with that profound part of it comes a responsibility to make sense of the profound nature that you've experienced in a way that is eminently human, so that it connects with other people. And so I think it's really interesting that you say you have to give yourself permission to fail, but permission to explore that greatness, because that greatness really ultimately, or the greatness, or the sense, I mean, so much of what you talked about is the essential, to explore the essential, and that essential is something that emanates from the organic, as opposed to something that's processed. It's like the essential is almost something you can't really put it all together. It's sort of like the Little Prince quote, right? That the essential is invisible to the eyes. What's truly, can I get it right? What's truly it only comes from the heart, I believe. It's what it was, and so yes. So it's amazing what you're doing, and I hope that you find the sense and the symmetry and the space to allow it to have its own life.
Thank you for that. Thank you. The one thing that I know I'm missing is that, what came out of the hospital in the beginning was certainly like the wow, factor, and filming that. And a lot of that was really, really painful stuff that I moved through, both physically, emotionally, but also the people around me were moving through. And what I feel is missing in my film and what we filmed for the last 27 years is so much of the joy. We were in our joy when we were experiencing joy, and therefore being in it means you're not thinking, hey, we should film this. But in the very painful and dark moments, I felt compelled to film it because it was unreal. It was hard to process, and somehow, like Anne Frank, looking for that friend and looking for that connection and way to anchor some sort of proof this happened, right? That's how I felt filming, especially in the beginning. And that changed over the years, and it's changed since our relationship to filming has changed. And there's that documentary, The Fantastic Machine. I'll talk about it again. Like, it really showed how different we are, and how fantastic this machine is, and yet it's causing some problems. So for me, I want it to be a thank you, an expression of gratitude. The many people that crossed my path that I may not ever see or connect with again, but that they know that I have lived a full and prosperous and productive and independent life that has been of joy and love. And that is thanks to Marcel.
Well, I think that you've brought a lot to it as well. I wouldn't diminish. Yeah, well, you're saying your goal is to bring the open heart to whatever you're doing, and that certainly is a step to being open to any of these experiences. And you've had a lot of experiences, so thank you, and thank you for also giving us that little bit of that nugget of it's so easy. We're conditioned to film and to highlight the differences, and we miss the things that we share, the sense of joy that really brings us together as a thing, as opposed to the things that separate us. So thank you for joining us, Stephani, for such an amazing little journey here, or big journey. Not a little journey, a very big journey.
It has to be said, because I want to say it, that we all need people to look up to, right? And when I started on my ski racing career, there were 2 members mono skiing on the US disabled ski team at the time. That was yourself and Sarah Will, and you both embodied in the US expression of it, that ski racing culture that I fell in love with in Marseille and in Switzerland. And I just want to thank you for the person that you are, the integrity that you had in your sport, and that you've parlayed into your film and your foundation, and the way that you're connecting people. You're a tremendous role model, and that started as a ski racer, and you've evolved it into so much more. And you've always been someone that I look up to and will continue to look up to. So it's been a real privilege for me to be on your show today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That is so nice to hear. And I think we all have heroes. We don't always know who treats us as a hero, who sees us as a hero. So I appreciate that. And Sarah obviously is great company there. It's great to be in her company and holding that torch. So thank you, Stephani. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank you.
yeah, and thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope that you've enjoyed our journey here. And the best thing you can do for us is to tell your friends. Tell your friends to tune in. When this is out, please like us, please follow us, please subscribe, and we will continue to bring you great content. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to Chris Wadell Living It for more stories on the adaptive community, the Paralympics, artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, experts in the experience of being human. Also follow us on Spotify, Apple, Facebook, and Instagram. I look forward to seeing you next week.